There are few games that I would love a sequel to as much as Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn. I mean, the game has some gaffes and some issues. But it took chances, made moves, and upon completion, had some of my favorite characters in a video game I've experienced in a long time. It took the best parts of God of War and the worst parts of Dark Souls. Why is everybody trying to wear Dark Souls skin like a mask? But that's the body of the video, and this is the intro. What is this game? It's magical Revolutionary War style God of War as a black woman with a magical fox that has feathers instead of fur. I don't think I'll ever understand these AI pictures. Nowhere in the prompt did I say, make her a supermodel, but here we are. Instead of Kratos killing gods for revenge, it's Norvanic killing gods for restitution. She unintentionally did a big dumb and released the underworld gods, and they are causing calamities on the planet. Now she's trying to fix it, which is where you meet Enki, one of the gods who has been released. But he's good, or is he? And this is the core of the video game. Nor and Enki going on an adventure. This isn't coming across exactly how there's something. Oh, yes, that's it. That's it. Nor and Enki going on an adventure. She's a little bit mean. And he's a bird fox thing. There's a zombie plague problem, and they are the vaccine. Thank you. I know, I'm a music. This is why I write music. This is why I'm a musician. It's got a lot of systems and opportunities. It's got a lot of combat freedom, and that gets me super hyped. When I see that a game has a thoughtful and high skill ceiling gameplay loop, I want my noob self to be destroyed by the game. I want my inability to result in annihilation, because that means there is mastery to be obtained. And this is where the flesh face mask of Dark Souls rears its nasty, nasty head. Pikachu! Dark Souls punishes you for attempting mastery. Parry is a perfect example. If you try to learn the incredibly awkward parry timing in Dark Souls versus a boss, you will fail.
Failure.
Like a lot.
Failure. Failure. Success. Failure.
Which is fine, but the problem is you are absolutely and completely punished by failure in Dark Souls. You lose your unspent XP. You restart at the checkpoint and have to run your dumb little self back to the boss to try again. And that's why in Elden Ring, Miyazaki was like, oops, maybe less of that. Let's make these Stake of Maracas checkpoints, and let's put checkpoints directly outside of the boss door. But even with those Elden Ring changes, there is still a massive risk-reward mismatch for trying to parry something in Dark Souls. It's simply not worth the amount of time it takes to learn. The punishment of getting hit and the ultimate punishment of dying is very high. This incentivizes not learning, but exploitation. You don't care about learning the system, you care about not suffering the consequences of failure. So you exploit and cheese and use what is overpowered instead. And Flintlock thought to itself when it was being willed into creation by its talented developers, what do I, as a sentient video game apparition, need to make me whole? Dark Souls aggravating death system. Yes! Yes! God of War, Devil May Cry, even the modern roguelike. Failure isn't a punishment, but part of the process. God of War and Devil May Cry demand a high level of execution from you, and if you play on high difficulty, you will die, but death is just part of learning.
Come at me with more next time!
In Dark Souls, death is very intentionally supposed to be aggravating. It's supposed to make it more high stakes, so you're afraid of dying. You're afraid of new areas and new enemies, and it's very effective at that. But it also makes you afraid of learning, afraid of trying anything new, afraid of anything not optimal. You don't try things for fun in Dark Souls because it punishes fun. The only people trying fun things are people making YouTube videos about them or people who have entirely too much time on their hands. But it's not just the death making you drop your XP that they took. It's the bonfires, the chugging of the health flask. So much chugging. And the enemies respawning in their exact locations ad infinitum. Do these things make the game better? Is it a better game because I have to do a corpse run to get my XP back? Absolutely not. Any Souls-like game that uses this trope, it makes it so I don't want to learn how to be good at the game. I want to learn what the safest cheese would be. Learning God of War or Devil May Cry or even Dragon's Dogma is hyper rewarding and extremely exciting. Learning Dark Souls makes you want to remove the top of your skull and scoop it out with a melon baller. But people who love Dark Souls don't think about it critically. Their brain infection forces them to embrace every aspect of it as if it was perfect and unalterably excellent. The places where Flintlock shines are when it's doing its own thing, like these beautiful flying sections, or when it's using the God of War formula, like these stun grabs. It is important in video games to copy homework. I understand that is why so many people copy Dark Souls, because it's very, very popular. If a game revolutionizes a system, copy their homework. Elden Ring is only as good as it is because it directly copied Breath of the Wild's homework. And I'm not saying this as a pejorative, but frequently when developers are scribbling down answers off of a previously successful game, they will copy the wrong answers as well as the correct ones. Corpse runs, lose your XP on death, bonfire resets all enemies, flask chugging.
I really love to chug chug.
I'm sorry to do that to you, but I want that association to be stuck in your mind. Leave the chugging of jugs to the Fortnite children. Flintlock is extremely narrative focused, and its narrative is, in my opinion, exquisite. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the visual world building, and I loved the world building through character conversations.
That's an impressive title. Forge Master.
Merely a fancy name for a smith. In the old days, they were like priests.
I loved that this felt like a populated world. You experienced the humanity of this place. I was thrilled by the dialogue of character interactions.
We don't have to split up, you know. You could come with me.
Now you want me with you? After leaving me behind in Dawn?
That mission was suicide at best. Sama should never have let you join us.
So you'd just be gone. You didn't even write to say goodbye.
Enki and Nor are both excellent characters. They're written well, and they're voice acted extremely well.
I bet I could run along the top of it, flit across the paddles.
Bet you whatever's in my pocket you'll be in the river in a minute.
What's in your pocket?
2 coppers and some lint.
Tempting, but I'll pass.
This guy, great job. This girl, exceedingly great job. I was absolutely impressed by her acting of this character. She did a phenomenal, expressive voice acting job. I've never heard her do voice acting in anything else. Let's learn a little bit more about her.
The fight against racism and fascism is completely bound up with the fight to
overthrow capitalism, the system that breeds both.
Oh, this is why they say never meet your heroes. But despite her expressed interest in destroying capitalism, oh my heck, I still stand on the ground that she did an impeccable job. Seeing Nor and Enki's interactions was a constant source of interest and kept me playing the game.
Why didn't you want to come here at first?
All I've known are camps, trenches, and memorials, Enki. I've spent my life in the first two, and I'll end up in the third.
You know how many Dark Souls characters I've ever cared about after playing every single Dark Souls game? 0. Zilch. A big, stinky, none out of ever. So Dark Souls gets away with having worlds that don't feel even remotely lived in because the characters are dumb and the narrative is dumb. Since it's dumb, everyone immediately forgets it and ignores it. And it becomes all about what crazy boss is hiding around the corner. And that's what Dark Souls does with absolute mastery. Psychotic and intriguing enemies and bosses, but enemies respawning whenever you sit down. Not helping me to believe this story you're trying to tell me. So since you're trying to do a really impressive and tight narrative, maybe don't copy that piece of the homework. Flintlock does not Dark Souls very well. But Flintlock God of Wars extremely well. Look at these stun finishers. You can do them with your melee weapon, and you can do them with your gun. They frankly never got old. Flintlock might not Dark Souls very well, but it blood pours super well. Look at how you interrupt and do counters with your gunshots. I understand that doesn't make any sense because Bloodborne is a Dark Souls game. But regardless, those are the facts. Whenever you stun an enemy, it's intense, visceral, and cathartic. It's a reward for stunning an enemy. Well, in Flintlock it's called curse and not stun, but tomato, potato, am I right? Flintlock took it one step further though. Whenever you get a perfectly timed block, instead of just adding stun like God of War, it lets you go right into a parry animation. So when you're moving and grooving, combat is a cinematic maelstrom of purest glory. Light attacks, charge attacks, Enki-powered rushes and slams. There's this fun little almost rhythm game of you get an upgrade where if Nor and Enki hit at the same time, which means you have to offset the button command for having Enki attack, and then you strike with Nor, it does extra damage. And that sort of thing I think is super great, it's super fun, that kind of thing is super crazy, I love that. You can just tell Enki to grapple a guy to incapacitate them. Enki is Atreus. And Atreus is a great idea. He's integral to combat and can act on his own if you're not utilizing him. He's always there, so conversations can be dynamic and natural, and not happen in a cutscene. Enki is all these things as well. Games should constantly be making you think and make choices. They should provide obstacles that you have to intelligently think about to overcome. And armored enemies is a great example. How do I hurt this enemy with his crazy armor? He's too armored. I can't damage him. You can build up its stun enough to stun grab it, ripping its shield off or knocking off the helmet. Then it takes damage as normal. Or
I'll smash it with a hammer.
And that's one of the brilliant features of this game. There is a lot of choice. Snipe guys with your musket before you enter the fight.
Headshot.
Death from above them with your pistol. or play it calm and slow and wait for a counterattack after parry, aka the entirety of every Dark Souls experience forever and always. You can play slow or fast, go nuts on parries, or go all in on a Bayonetta dodge slow-mo. Lots of second-to-second choice and interaction. Once again, something that God of War does excellent, and something that Dark Souls does horrendous. Use your freaky lightning feather fox as a laser beam. Oh yeah! It's a great game when it God of Wars, and a stinky baby diaper game when it Dark Souls. I got so frustrated with the corpse run and the full map of enemies reset thing that I did the unthinkable. I turned the game back to normal difficulty.
I am in incredible pain.
I would have much rather played it on hard difficulty had it not done the Dark Souls death penalty thing. I played it on normal, and it was a worse game because of it. But holy crap, one more corpse run and I would have flown to New York, rebuilt the Twin Towers, then thrown my computer off of them. I'm telling you, this is not a good Dark Souls game, but it's a rip-roaring, excellent God of War game that happens to be plagued by some Dark Souls nonsense. So get all that Dark Souls crap out. Get it out. This has been another episode of Unpopular Opinions with Ben Fred.